This is a minute marker page to help you more easily navigate the episode in case you're looking for one specific recipe. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my kitchen. It's good to see you again. So today, I am very excited to share with you one of the dishes specifically that we're making. It is my Carnitas recipe. This took me 2 years to perfect. I started on a quest maybe about 4 years ago or so to make really good carnitas at home. When I first set out to do this, I was thinking to myself, how hard could it be? After about 10 failed recipes, some of them, by the way, extremely gross, I finally took little bits and pieces of all the different recipes that I tried, combined my favorite parts of all of them together, and came up with my own. One of the biggest things that I came across in my quest to find the best recipe, so many of the recipes called for either lime juice or orange juice to be added. And while those components are important, I feel like the quantity was way too much. And you get to the end of the cook, you're so proud of yourself because the house smells amazing. You know, you've hyped it up. The family's excited to eat your food. And you take one bite and all you taste is something sour. Like sometimes it's just way too much acidity. So what I did is I replaced the liquid levels that they were calling for with water. And then we will add a whole orange, we just slice it in half, and a little bit of lime juice because you do need the acidity to help kind of break down the meat the way that you want it to. But the key is once this long, slow cook is done, you then sear the meat in batches in a cast iron pan. You deglaze with juices from the crock pot, and then you do a final seasoning. I promise you, this is gonna be one that you're really, really proud of. 1 minute. Yes, sweetie. What? No more snacks. You just had like 3 snacks. Go in the playroom. So, welcome back. I'm glad to have you in my kitchen, and let's get this day started. So before we get into throwing the ingredients in the pot, I just want to talk about roasts because honestly, this is probably, aside from the ingredients that you add to it, this is the most important part. So I did a grocery pickup order because that's my life now. I don't ever actually make it inside the grocery store unless they forget something. And I ordered a pork roast like I normally do. When I was unpacking the groceries, I'm laughing because this sad little all white meat, no marbling fat except for this fat cap right here, roast is what I pulled out. And this would be awful as carnitas. You do not want this. You do not want to see all pink. That's no good. Not for this recipe. This big guy is what you want. You want 3 to 4 pounds. You want to see fat marbling like this. You want to see dark red. You don't want to see this light pink. It's okay if it has sections of light pink. I actually had to go back to the grocery store last night after we got the girls to bed to get a proper roast. This was literally the last roast in the store. I normally don't do bone-in. It's not the worst thing in the world if you do. It just is a little bit more of a process when you get to the stage of trimming off the fat and shredding it before searing it in the pan. So here's the bone. Not that big of a deal. You do lose some bulk and some meat. So I definitely prefer to do boneless. But just if this is your first time and you really don't know like what you're looking for, this beautiful red, this marbling, this fat. I mean, all that's gonna break down anyway, and then we're gonna trim it off, but it gives so much flavor. Do not, and I'm actually kind of glad they made a mistake so that I could show you guys this. Do not do a pork loin or something similar to a pork loin. It's gonna be dry. It's gonna be awful. You're gonna end up ordering pizza. When seasoning your roast for the carnitas, go ahead and sprinkle all of the dry ingredients in an even layer over the top of your roast that's sitting in your crock pot. If you would like, you can mix all of these dry ingredients together in a bowl and then do a dry rub over the entire outside of the roast. It's not necessary. You're going to get great flavor either way. Then simply set your onion and your orange to either side of the roast. Be careful when adding the liquids. You want to make sure that those liquids drizzle into the sides of the roast so as not to disturb that seasoning layer that you put on the top of your roast. Then just pop it on to low, put the lid on, let it sit undisturbed for at least 8 hours, as long as you're doing a 3 to 4 pound roast. Check at 8 hours. If it does not fall apart extremely easily, when you go to lift it, continue to cook it 30 minutes at a time, checking. The meat should fall apart almost instantly upon trying to lift it out of the crock pot. So here's the deal. I feel like a lot of people think that weekly meal prep needs to be this like farm to table experience, which it can be. And there's no, I'm not talking bad about however anybody does their meal prep. However, please do not discount your work and your efforts if you sometimes use shortcuts. Shortcuts are fine. This is real life. I'm not raising hens in the backyard. I'm just trying to make good food for my family that's as minimally processed as possible. And I'm sorry, my youngest is trying to compete with me right now, so I apologize if the audio in the background's a little noisy. All of that being said, I just buy a rotisserie chicken from the store. Could I roast my own chicken and then shred it and then make the chicken salad? Sure. I'm not going to. We're making like 10 things today. I don't have time for that. Or I don't have patience. I don't know which one it is. Maybe it's a mix of both. But regardless, what we're doing right now is we are shredding the meat off of the rotisserie chicken. Kind of a tedious process. If you're vegetarian, I'm sure you don't want to watch this. So that's why I'm not going to do like a huge, to-do about how you shred a rotisserie chicken. I'm sure we can all figure that part out. And then you just add the seasoning, you let it sit for about 3 or 4 hours, and then go back and taste it. Take a bite. If you feel it needs an adjustment, then go ahead and do it. And if not, then that's fine, leave it be. We've got the initial seasoning on our curried chicken salad. I say initial, mainly because I burned my tongue last night when I was eating. And so to me, it seems a little dull in flavor. I'm gonna give my tongue a little bit to kind of wake up today, and then I'll taste it later just to see if it needs any help. So we've covered it with plastic wrap, and then we'll move on to the next thing. This honestly was the easiest rice I think I have ever made. You simply chop up an onion and saute it in some melted butter. Once the onions are translucent, you add the minced garlic, your seasonings, and then you sprinkle dry rice over the top. You add your chicken broth, and then you cover, let it come to a simmer. And after 20 minutes, you've got deliciously seasoned and fragrant rice that can go with so many of the dishes that you make throughout the week. All right, so our potatoes are resting and it smells amazing in here. So we are going to season our chicken. Come out. We're gonna season our chicken. You can call it whatever you want it. Blackened chicken really is just like a Cajun seasoned chicken that is not breaded, but fried in oil on the stovetop, usually in a cast iron pan or something. I feel like we're going heavy on a couple of the other dishes, so I really want to kind of minimize the oil, the frying. Okay, I see what you're doing. That's fine. Sorry. So we are just going to season this with a mix of, I have blackened seasoning and then some of that Creole blend that I used for the breakfast burritos earlier. We're just gonna do that too. But I'm gonna bake them. Just gonna bake them in the oven. And yes, you can buy your own chicken breast and you can thin slice and pound it out and all that stuff. I don't do that. I just, you know me, whatever shortcut I can find. Kind of with the seasoning that we did on the braised beef, if you remember that, there's no measurement. Every fillet, especially if you're buying them pre-trimmed and all of that, they're all gonna be a different size. If it's so, just, you know, cover the top. Do you wanna do a super thick covering? No. But you don't want to be really dainty with it either. Sorry for the screaming. When I first decided to do this cooking for all of you, I swore to myself that I would not do it in a pristine way. I didn't want this, and not making any digs at anybody, but you know, this wasn't going to be Martha Stewart. This isn't going to be me showing you how to do tea time. Yeah. Oh, was that so funny? I wanted it to be real life. This is what all of us are cooking at the surroundings. This is how we cook. We have children screaming, or if you're a fur parent, you have dogs barking and probably fighting with their brothers and sisters, you know, so it's reality, it's real life. I didn't want to make this too pristine, so welcome to my home. It's loud, there's constant chaos, but there's also constant fun, and you know, it's just all part of it. Oh, bless it. This little mix has gotten a little stuck, so we're just gonna cover, and then I know this looks like a lot, but a lot of the flavor kind of cooks off a bit when you're baking it, and so that's it. We're gonna let this sit for about 15 minutes or so, then I'm gonna throw it in the oven. We're gonna bake it up, and then the protein bowl itself, I actually bought rice pouches to cook instead of pre-assembling, just so that everything's a little more fresh, such as these. So I normally do Seeds of Change. That's honestly my favorite brand. They make quinoa and ancient grains and all of these. They're little white microwave pouches. And it takes 90 seconds, so it's perfect. It's gonna be a pretty simple meal, but healthy, and healthy carbs and good protein. Thank you, sweetheart. I love you. I know, the camera's looking at you too. Oh, here she comes. All right, Pumpkin. So once my husband gets home, then we will move on to the black bean burgers. All right, everyone. So if I'm talking a little bit more quiet than usual, it's because my daughters are asleep now. It's been a few hours since we finished the last part and we had dinner. So the girls have had baths, they're in bed, and we're gonna finish up the final dish. Behind me, we have the meat that is finished. I'm gonna go ahead and trim off the fat, shred it, get rid of the bone, and then I will do a voiceover for the rest of this just because I don't think anyone wants to listen to me whisper talk. So the process is basically you take the shredded meat, you put it in your pan, you sear it, you deglaze with some of the leftover juice from the slow cooker. And then you put it on a prepared baking sheet with a little bit of seasoning on the base level, a little bit of seasoning on the top, and then we're done. So let's get this meat finished so that we can relax for the rest of the night. All right, y'all, we are ready to sear the carnitas. So we've shredded our pork, we've removed all of the fat and gristle. Make sure that your cast iron skillet is extremely hot. Add that vegetable oil, about 2 tablespoons for the first batch. And then work your meat in batches. Let that first batch sit for about 3 minutes before you flip it. When you do flip your meat, you want to see a nice caramelized sections that have a really deep golden brown color. Then you take 1/4 cup of the juice from the crock pot, let it sizzle. Make sure to move your hand away pretty quickly because that steam is pretty hot. Once it's deglazed for a few seconds, take your tongs, swirl the meat around the pan to sort of sop up the juices that are there, and then remove it and place it onto your prepared baking pan. Try your best not to leave too many pieces of meat behind each batch because those pieces will get very, very crispy, a little bit hard, a little bit burnt, and you don't want that to affect the flavor of your next batches to come. Just continue to repeat these steps. After the first or second batch, you may want to add about 1 tablespoon more of oil. But the further along you get, you won't need to because your pan's going to be really well seasoned. You don't want to overdo it with the oil, but you also do need it to be able to get that really good sear on the meat. If you have any pieces of pork that are a little bit larger or chunkier, go ahead and just use the side of your tongs, press down. Your meat should be tender enough that it easily smashes down and separates a little bit more. If you're unsure whether or not you're leaving the meat on there for a proper amount of time before flipping it, just lift up the edge of one of the pieces, peek, check to see what the color looks like. If you need to, just wait another 30 seconds before you go ahead and flip the batch. The last piece of work that you will do for this is you will take the leftover juice, not too much, I would say about 1.5 to 2 cups of liquid, and dump that right into the pan and let it boil. You're gonna let it go for about 2 minutes, 2 to 4 minutes. You want to reduce that down. We're not looking to make a gravy or a thick sauce, just a really well infused broth that we then gently drizzle. You don't use all of it. Just use enough that you know that you've really gotten your carnitas juicy and well seasoned. And you want to take a bite at the end. If you feel it needs a little bit more salt, do ever so slightly a drizzle of the adobo seasoning over the top. And there you have it. I hope you love it as much as my family does.